You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
And it seems like another day, another Disney controversy. From the actors movies may choose to play starring roles, from the content on the screen, such as Deadpool and Wolverine, which was his first R movie and all of its graphic references in it, to now theme park controversy. And it also includes Deadpool and Wolverine. If you haven't seen the movie, if you're not familiar with the characters, then none of this is going to make any sense to you, and you're only going to look at it at face value, what you see and what you hear. But it's all relevant to best understanding what might have gone into some of these decisions. And Disney is in hot water, at least to some, because at Disneyland California Adventure, there is a performance, if you will, a comedy routine called Storytime with Deadpool. And it plays just like the movie, the types of jokes, the types of innuendo. And make no mistake, it is adult in nature. There are sexual references. There are references to gay sex and other things. The problem, it seems, is the show, Storytime with Deadpool, is billed as an all ages show. When I was most recently at Disneyland California Adventure, I saw the show. I know exactly what it looks like, what it sounds like. But I've also seen the movie, so I know exactly it is in concert with what the movie shows. The question is, should it have been billed as for all ages, or does it not matter because you know what you're getting with Deadpool and Wolverine? I don't have young kids. I maybe would have felt uncomfortable with some of the references, but just about anyone who's coming to see Storytime with Deadpool, and this is a show which is outside so other people can hear it. If you've seen Deadpool and Wolverine, you know what you're going to get with Storytime with Deadpool and Wolverine. But Tuala, you are someone who has a teenage daughter, and you have a son who's now an adult, but you're closer to, I would say, the fatherhood age group who would be most offended by this. Did you have any problem with it from what you've seen about it?
From what I've seen about it, and from the jokes and humor that I've seen, I say that this is Deadpool Wolverine. If you walk into this show and don't know who Deadpool is, you may be taken aback. And maybe, just maybe, it would have been prudent for Disney California Adventure Park to issue a parental warning, a PG-13, say, warning for anyone coming in to see the show. And that would have been sufficient, because I think if you do go in there with younger children, you may be in for a shock. But when I went to see Deadpool Wolverine, there were literally parents in there who were walking in there with young children. And I'm thinking to myself, do you not see that this is a rated R film? And they didn't care. They watched the whole damn film. So I don't know.
You can, and see, that's, I think, what I call dishonesty of it all. If you have any familiarity with Deadpool and Wolverine, and you've opted in to see a show, Deadpool and Wolverine, actually the show is tamer than the movie by a lot. I understand if you felt that you were duped because the show is billed for all ages. I would not agree with that. It's not for all ages. But you can't tell me that you didn't know what you were probably going to hear, with the exception of profanity. There's no profanity in the show.
Now, and see, this is another thing where I gotta kind of call BS in people who are taking issue with the show, because from what I've read, the dialogue in the show, there's a lot of innuendo, but if you don't know what it is they're talking about, you're probably a kid who's not laughing, i.e. when we go and see what films? Pixar movies, and there are jokes in the movies that are for adults, which kids aren't laughing at. They're laughing at fart jokes and colors and characters getting pies in their faces or whatever, but they're not laughing at the things that we see. And I'm talking Toy Story on down.
Yeah.
There are jokes in there that, like, if you're an adult, you know what Slinky the dog was talking about. So, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of disingenuous outrage, and I'm not buying it.
I agree, if only because I think it's easy to pile on Disney if you already are mad at Disney or you don't like Disney for being quote unquote woke. I'll give you a perfect example. One of the jokes is where Deadpool's talking about Tinder and Grindr. Only an adult knows the difference between Tinder and Grindr.
And what they are. No 5-year-old is like saying, and if you want to explain that to your child, what you're laughing at and what the joke is, well, that's a you and your child thing. But your child, I promise you, at 6 years old, they have no idea what's happening right now. They don't.
No idea. And just because you know as an adult, then the question becomes, why is the child there in that environment to see Deadpool and Wolverine? Not that we're not even talking about the movie. For the child to have any reference point of Deadpool and Wolverine, I wonder then what was on your mind as a parent. I agree the show should not be billed for all ages, just like the movie was not for all ages. But if you're going to see a Deadpool and Wolverine show at Disneyland California Adventure, you gotta know it's not for young kids. It can't be, because neither character is. Not even Wolverine by himself with all the violence. Wolverine has never been in a rated G movie. So to think that with his claws, whatever he's going to do in an actual amusement park is going to be anything less than PG-13, you're lying to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it can be a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And we're not done with this conversation, because I think there's more evidence to suggest that this is about just wanting to pile on Disney more than it is about Deadpool and Wolverine somehow offending our sensibilities. Hell, I mean, if you think about the kids, what they just see on social media, it is far worse than what they're seeing. Now, if you want to hold Disney to some puritanical standard, well, that's a you problem, because they're in the entertainment business. If you want to wrongly assume that Disney is all about children's entertainment from wall to wall, that has never been the case, or hasn't been the case for a good 30 years or so. If you think about the totality of the properties and movie studios which they own. But we'll talk about that more in just a second. It's later with Mo Kelly. KFI AM 640. We're live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
And Tuwala, I actually got a little angry during the break because I was thinking about the fake outrage. I call it fake outrage. And if you weren't listening last segment, we're talking about the Deadpool and Wolverine show, the live show, which is at Disneyland California Adventure, story time with Deadpool and Wolverine. And there are some veiled sexual references like Tinder and Grindr. There's even a reference to bottom, which is a sexual term. And I was saying, like, well, if you're at a Deadpool and Wolverine show, which is based on an R movie with all sorts of violence and sexual references, duh. I've never thought of Disney as only being children's entertainment. I do agree that there should have been, if there wasn't, some sort of disclaimer saying, hey, this show is not for kids. I think that's a fair complaint. But to say or even suggest that has no place in Disneyland, I think it disregards history of Disneyland. Disneyland has never been completely innocent. The reason that they changed rides and that Disney was called woke, for example, they changed the ride Pirates of the Caribbean, because let's be honest, correct me if I'm wrong, if you remember the old Pirates of the Caribbean, they're basically, it's rape culture where you're chasing winches, the word they use, and you're having these pirates have their way with women. It was intimated. It wasn't explicit, but visually it was clear. Disneyland has never always been about just kiddie themes.
Well, not only that, this is also a show that's not readily available for everyone walking by. At Disney California Adventure, a lot of the Marvel shows, they have the one main show that takes place in the courtyard, in the Disney MCU little area. There's the main show that takes place. This isn't like the Doctor Strange show that was the magic show that was there for everyone to see. This is something you have to actually go inside, make a decision to go and watch. This isn't out and about in the kids land at California Adventure where they show the Bugs Life show or Pixar Place. It's not there. It is something specifically created for fans of the largest film of the universe that just happens to be owned by Disney. Why would you not have a show there for adults and fans of that? And if you're a fan of it, like you keep saying, you know what's already going to happen.
Disney, for some, and I understand Disney/Disneyland may mean different things to different people, but let's not engage in revisionist history of what they have been or what they will be. Marvel has employed profanity in their movies for quite some time. It's a running joke. You know, they use it and they say, you know, going to wash that mouth out with soap, but they have always edged closer to adult. This is not new, and this is not something which is incongruent to the Disney brand. Disney has trended more adult for decades now. And I heard someone, I can't remember who it was, who lied and said the only place they sell alcohol at Disneyland is at Club 33. That's not true. You can go to Blue Bayou and have all sorts of drinks. How do I know? Because I had like 5 drinks the last time I was there at Blue Bayou, one of my favorite restaurants there. So, and that's not even counting to all of downtown Disney.
Disney
is all about adults.
The entire bar scene in Star Wars Land where they sell alcoholic drinks.
Yes.
It's look, let's not lie to ourselves. Okay, you can lie to yourself if you want to. Don't lie to us. How about that? You know what Disneyland is all about. You know actually what Deadpool and Wolverine is about. They've never shied away from it. It's in the trailers. You know, he says this may be new to Disney, but it's not new to me when he's talking about a certain item going in a certain place. That's in the trailer. You know what time it is when you're talking about Deadpool and Wolverine. I look forward to seeing the show. I've allowed my children to watch Deadpool and Wolverine and Deadpool 2 and Deadpool 1. They are at that age where they are well aware of what's going on in the world. They watch all types of horror movies and we watch them with them. We're good with it because we want to be able to explain what's going on if necessary. But if that's not your bag, guess what you can go do? You can go over to Pixar Pier. You can go over to Pixar Place and you can go watch the Fun Family Show all you want. But don't try to come in and throw your Bible at me. Don't do it. I don't want that.
And here we always talk about capitalism and you know, businesses getting to choose for themselves how they want to make money. You don't try to ascribe your personal values to what the company does. If you don't want to support, fine. But don't try to say that Disney is supposed to be this or supposed to be that. And you're denying what we already know Disney to be. And sometimes I think this is the real issue. They conflate the brand Disney with Walt Disney of 1955. It's not that anymore. It's inclusive of Paramount and Pixar and Star Wars and Marvel, all these disparate properties appealing to very different audiences. Star Wars is not for kids anymore. It hasn't been for quite some time. In fact, people are angry that it's actually trended just a little younger than what it was when it first came out. In the 1970s and 1980s, when Disney took over, they tried to, I'll say, kid it down, and it hasn't worked. But Star Wars has been an older property as far as maturity level. Mm-hmm. It's always been PG. So the belief that Disney is anything under the umbrella of Disney is supposed to cater to children or is not supposed to have an adult theme, I think it's just dishonest. I can't even call it disingenuous. I think it denies what we already know about the Disney banner and all of the brands it includes, which includes FX.
Yes.
You know, let's not forget, you know, when you turn on The Old Man and that's on FX, that's a Disney property now. And if they wanted to do The Old Man Jeff Bridges show at Disneyland, well, it's probably going to be a lot of killing.
I mean, look, you know, a lot of these protests and a lot of the comments I read, these are the same people that want to ban books in libraries and in the OC. These are people who, have all types of hang-ups about what we should do in our households because they don't do it in their households. I would never allow my kid to. Okay, got it. Okay,
but you can't have it both ways.
You can't.
If you're going to complain or allege that Disney has gone woke, and also complain that Disney is unrestrained and is offering content regardless of what society may be saying, because they want to do what they want to do with their brand. You can't have it both ways. If you think that Disney's trying to cater to certain groups and then at the same time puts out Deadpool and Wolverine, which is full of profanity, which is full of violence, which is full of innuendo, which is full of racial humor all through it, you can't have it both ways. You can't call them woke for this and then complain that, well, Deadpool and Wolverine, they break all the rules and they make fun of everyone. Which is it?
How can you claim you want free speech, but then you don't want this show? What are we talking about?
All I'm saying is I listen to everyone. And you say on Monday that X, Y, and Z is important to you. But then when someone does X, Y, and Z their own way, you say, no. ABC is important to us. There is nothing politically correct about Deadpool and Wolverine. Can we agree upon that? So when the politically incorrect comes to an amusement park, you know what happens? You get more of the politically incorrect at an amusement park. You can't have it both ways. And by the way, Disney's not going broke, so they're going to keep doing what they do because they're still making money.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
I don't know about you, but I have noticed this outsized impact that social media and traditional media, both together in tandem, are having on the judicial system. You can think about, or the legal system more generally. You can think about Free Britney and how that documentary and movement led to Britney Spears getting out from under that conservatorship. You can think of Surviving R. Kelly and how that documentary, both parts of that documentary, helped push the criminal cases, plural, against him and how he ended up in jail. Now, prison, most likely for the rest of his life. You can listen to Unsolved with Steve Gregory here on KFI, and you will see how his work has led to the advancement in a lot of cases, either exonerations or criminal charges. We see it time and time again, but more so now than ever before. And it seems to be happening again with Eric and Lyle Menendez. The campaign and momentum, they're picking up speed where they could possibly go free via parole or maybe even a new trial. I'm old enough, and I don't think Stefan's old enough, but I'm going to use him as a comparison point. I'm old enough to remember when they were originally sentenced and how that trial was such a big deal about how Lyle and Eric Menendez brutally murdered their parents. The only thing which is being debated now is whether there was evidence excluded, which could have impacted the decision of the jury. But I'm not going to get into all the small details. It's just amazing to me that from where I sit, a lot of this conversation now and the momentum to where they may actually get either a new trial or parole is mind-boggling to me, because I'm old enough to remember it was just a foregone conclusion. It's like, how in the world could you shoot your parents and you're obviously profiting and you're obviously trying to get your inheritance early? That's how we, the general public, perceived it originally. Rich kids from Beverly Hills killed their parents, made up some story about being molested, and they shot their mother in cold blood while she was crawling on her knees. That is what I remember from the news coverage, and I would say the general belief about the case. It was one of those cases where people were not even going to give a second thought to putting them away for the rest of their lives. And now it's something that George Gascon might actually have to deal with. Well, he says he's not going to deal with it until after the election, but still, it's something which has now become front page news. Even Vanity Fair did a large expose on the case. And the only through line through this and the other big profile cases with celebrities that I was talking about earlier is social media and traditional media changing how we may think of the case. Now, me personally, I don't give a damn. Lyle and Eric should never see the light of day. There's nothing that you're going to show me which is going to change my original thought of it. It's yes, they're going to try to present more evidence that one was molested by the father. There may have been more evidence to that. But if you knew the case, you knew they weren't in imminent danger, and they just blew away their parents. Mark, I got to ask you, and then I'm going to go to Steph and Mark, because you were most likely in a different state. Did the Lyle and Eric Menendez case hit your radar? Because this is pre-internet, this is pre-cable.
Yeah, I think everybody knew about it and wanted to know about the toupee thing.
Yes. Yes. Go ahead and explain that, or I will. Go ahead.
Well, it's my understanding they even touched on it in this new show that's on, what is it, FX?
It's Netflix.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, it's it's by the same person who did the Dahmer show, the Monster Show, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. One of the brothers. It's my understanding. Where's the piece? And that came out as a result of the trial.
But it was obvious during the trial. I remember as basically a kid. It's like, that's a toupee.
Well, they're all obvious. I mean, people who wear them never know how obvious they look wearing them because they go from zero to Elvis. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, but you were in Washington. But you were in state of Washington at the time, correct?
Remind me of the year again. I'm trying to remember where I was.
Oh, this is 35 years ago, so this is maybe 89-ish.
Oh, yeah, okay. Definitely in Washington at the time. Yeah, we knew that. That was national news for sure.
Yeah, they're convicted in 96, but I think the murders were like in 89 or something like that.
Yeah, definitely national news, and it was shocking because the news wasn't as full of snuff film footage as it is today. It was a shocking story back then.
It was a huge story. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I think we've become a little bit more numb to violence in the news because not only does there seem to be a great deal of it reported on, but, the old if it bleeds, it leads thing. I know that to be too true from years and years as a reporter. But I think the actual content of that is much more graphic than it used to be in the old days.
And this was not in the exact same time period, but it was in, I would say, the orbit of OJ and Rodney King. All this was going on in LA in the same, I'll say, news generation. And it added to the whole trials of the century. There was always something going on in LA, which brings me to you, Stephen. Do you have any memory of this case and trial originally?
Not originally, but just the only reason I even knew about it before this came out was because, as most women are, she was really into true crime. So she researched it up and down and knew everything about it. And that's how I learned about it.
If you would have asked me back in the 1990s whether Eric and Lyle Menendez would have ever had any chance at parole, I would have said no way in hell. But the positive momentum which is being generated for them is mind-boggling to me. I haven't changed my mind about it. I have not heard anything. I've not seen anything which makes them seem more sympathetic to me. But I do acknowledge that we as a society have changed our ideas in a general sense about imprisonment and rehabilitation, the idea of the death penalty or life without parole. We've changed. We're a very different country today than who we were in the 1980s. Crime was perceived differently than today. Prisons were different. We didn't have the for-profit prisons that we do today. Back then, the United States was just very, very different if you could remember back then. And I would never, ever in my wildest dreams thought that these guys would have a chance at getting out of prison. But it looks like they have a distinct possibility, not a probability, but they got a good shot. And George Gascon might even have something to do with it. Imagine that.
Kim Kardashian is now throwing her weight behind this to get them off.
Gosh.
Yeah, she wants to help the case.
That kind of just makes my point. You know, the queen of social media in many respects, and all her followers who are too young to even remember this case. It matters. That type of social media matters in today's world. It helped put R. Kelly in prison. It's helping put Diddy in prison for life. And it helped free Britney. And we're seeing, again, where social media and the power of even traditional media in the form of documentaries is changing how we're viewing a lot of these cases and criminals. Yes, I said it. The criminals, they blew away their parents. I feel the same way.
It seems like the crux of the matter that's causing the reevaluation is that contemporaneous evidence has arisen showing that the Menendez brothers were abused, molested by their father at the time, and that wasn't known before. So I don't think anybody's disputing that they did the killing.
No. I said that,
but it's mitigating circumstance.
No, I said that, and I said it doesn't change the fact that they were not in imminent danger,
right?
Which had to do with the murder. That was brought out. They didn't have the same evidence. There's some, yes, contemporary evidence. There's some letters which validate that the abuse was happening, but that was broached at trial. I remember that. It just was for the jury. It was not a mitigating factor. It did not justify in the jury's minds, if I remember correctly, that they needed to murder not only their father, but their mother as well at that moment.
Right.
So, you know, I still feel the same way. It doesn't make me feel more sympathetic to them because from what I remember the case, this was planned, this was plotted, this was first degree. But, you know, if you got Kim Kardashian on your side, who am I to argue with her?
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
All right, before we get out of here, got some really good moments tonight, really good thoughts and conversations. Started with the election. We talked about how one city's using vending machines to vend books and board games. Didn't think that was a great idea, but did think that the Orange County School in Huntington Beach is going to use a QR code to find out where students are when they leave class as a hall pass. And I got to get on another soapbox talking about marijuana use and how some middle schoolers were poisoned, it seems, from some laced edibles. So much stuff to talk about because we all live in this place together, this society. We may not agree on how it should run or which direction it's going in, but we should all participate in this process. And throughout the show tonight, you'll probably find a recurrent theme that Mark was wrong and I was right.
Play the tapes. I demand that we play the tapes.
That means they have to listen to the podcast to find out one way or the other.
Everybody wins.
No, but I do like going back and forth with you, Mark, because you're thoughtful and believe it or not, you're more nuanced than most people are. Not everything is this or that. Not everything is black or white. There's a lot of gray in life. A lot.
Yeah, and we still just have to keep forcing ourselves to shake our politics off of things that don't that it doesn't apply to. And the AI example is one of those. I mean, it's just its own issue, regardless of where you stand on any political spectrum.
I actually disagree with you. I think.
Oh, here we go.
No. It's. I think it's more to the extreme. I think politics has very little to do with most of our lives. Almost nothing has to do with politics. We have made it a point to inject politics to everything, but it's not naturally part of many of these discussions. We just want to make it political. When we're talking about edibles in schools, that's not a political discussion, but schools have been politicized to the nth degree. When we're talking about vending machines and what they should be selling schools, it's not a political discussion, but people want to politicize that discussion. Vaccines as well.
Oh, God, yeah. Vaccines, climate, all of that.
Right. Those aren't political discussions. They have been manipulated and turned into political discussions, but they're not naturally. They not historically. They haven't been, but more recently they've turned it into, like, for example, we should be able to discuss Disney without injecting our political beliefs onto it.
Well, the Disney thing reminds me of every time I go into an R-rated horror film and I see parents bringing in a young kid and I'm thinking, for God's sakes, what do you think you're doing? I mean, I don't want society to be completely child-proof. I like the word nerfed. Be a parent. I mean, don't expect everyone to do it for you. What are you thinking when you expose your kid to that stuff that any reasonable person would know is not appropriate? That has nothing to do with politics.
Right. But then if we have that same discussion through a political lens, we start talking about the nanny state, what the Democrats are doing, passing these laws, that, that's how it becomes political. But at its root, it isn't political. Not at all.
Yeah, I despise how tribal we've all become. It does nothing to get us to the bottom of any problem. It's just your team, my team. And what if you're not on a team and you just want to go where the facts lead? Then both sides hate you. It's funny you say that, because not a day goes by, well, maybe a day goes by, where if I check my social media mentions or comments that are sent to me, I'll never be left enough to please progressives, and I'll never be MAGA, so MAGA will never appreciate me. And I always say to a person who is always going right or always going left, the person who is not doing either will always seem either too far to the left of the people who are turning right and too far to the right of the people turning left. It's an impossible needle to thread, and we shouldn't have to.
We shouldn't have to, but sometimes I think we were born at the wrong time. You and I are very similar in this regard. And I don't say that I don't endorse political candidates because I want someone to like me or I'm trying to offend someone less. No, it's because I'm not wired that way. I don't invest my personhood in either a political party, a political ideology, or any type of political issue. It's something I like to discuss, but it's not something which consumes me or is part of my personality in any way.
Well, it shouldn't be, because orthodoxy is a shortcut around your responsibility to be an individual thinker and come to conclusions on your own. Once you adopt the orthodoxy of a side, you don't have to think anything through for yourself anymore.
Oh, it's much easier, and it's quicker shorthand to say, well, if so-and-so believes it or that group does it, it must be wrong. No, that's not true. It's not true. As far as me, most people aren't even curious enough to even ask. They just assume. They invariably, and you've seen some of the messages, people tell me what I believe. And it's like, and they want to argue. It's like, and I tell them, well, you want to argue what my favorite color is? You think you know me better than me?
Yes. Well, that's yeah. What comes along with having a public job. And I encourage people to assume the worst about you at Mr. Mo Kelly.
I knew it. I knew it was coming. Get off my show.
It's our show.
Oh, okay.
And you're about to sit through our newscast as well.
KFI AM 640. We're live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app.
We'll help you figure it out. It's kind of what we do.
KFI.
And KOST HD2.
Los Angeles, Orange County.
Live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.